Part 1. Al's claws tapped nervously across the keyboard as strings of data flowed past his eyes. The young had been monitoring black market communications for 3 years now, searching for profitable information to sell. Tonight felt different. His sensors had caught something unusual, a heavily encrypted signal bouncing through 17 relay stations before disappearing into the dark net. Most information brokers would have ignored it. Military-grade encryption meant government secrets, and government secrets meant dangerous attention. But Al was young and ambitious. He wanted to make a name for himself. It took him 6 hours to crack the first layer of encryption, then another 4 for the second. By the time dawn broke over his small apartment on Station Gamma 7, he had finally broken through. What he found made his blood run cold. The screen displayed a simple interface with strange symbols he didn't recognize at first. Then the translation software kicked in. Galactic Terror Network access restricted to registered predator species only. Leaned closer to his screen. A terror network. He had never heard of such a thing. His people, though, were traders and brokers, not warriors. They survived by being useful to everyone and threatening to no one. Whatever this network was, it had been hidden from species like his. He clicked on the main archive. Thousands of files appeared, each labeled with species names, locations, and threat classifications. The most recent files all had the same tag: Human Extreme Caution Advised. Humans had heard of them. They were a relatively new species on the galactic stage, having only achieved faster-than-light travel about 50 years ago. They were expanding quickly, setting up colonies in contested space. Some called them aggressive, others called them ambitious. Had always thought of them as just another species trying to survive. He opened the first file. Video footage began playing and watched in growing horror. The video showed a hunting preserve on Prime. They were one of the galaxy's apex predator species, massive reptilian creatures that stood 3 meters tall with claws that could tear through steel. They maintained private hunting grounds where they brought members of prey species for sport. This particular video showed a human female being released into the preserve. According to the data, her name was Sarah, a cargo pilot whose ship had been captured 6 weeks earlier. They had given her a 1-day head start, as was their custom. They expected her to last maybe 3 days if she was clever. The timestamp on the video showed day 47. Al watched as the hunting party moved through dense jungle following Sarah's trail. They were confident, joking with each other in their growling language. The subtitles translated their words. "This prey has been lucky. Today we end the game." Then the first trap triggered. The lead stepped on a hidden pressure plate. Sharpened branches, hardened in fire, shot out from both sides of the trail. 2 hunters went down immediately, the spears piercing through their tough hide. The survivors roared in rage and charged forward, looking for their prey. That was when Sarah dropped from the trees above. She had fashioned a crude spear from a branch and what looked like a piece of metal from a crashed shuttle. She landed on the back of the largest and drove the spear down through a gap in its neck scales. The creature thrashed and died within seconds. The remaining turned to face her, but Sarah was already running. She led them deeper into the jungle, toward more traps she had prepared. One fell into a pit filled with poisoned stakes. Another triggered a deadfall that crushed its legs. By the end of the video, all 5 hunters were dead. Sarah stood in the middle of the preserve, covered in mud and blood, breathing hard but alive. The video ended with her looking directly at the camera and speaking in her human language. "Tell your friends I'm still here. Tell them to come get me." Sat back in his chair, his hands shaking. That was impossible. Prey didn't kill predators. That wasn't how the galaxy worked. He opened another file. This one showed a human colony on a world called Epsilon Prime. A raiding fleet had arrived, expecting easy pickings. They were feared throughout the galaxy for their brutal efficiency. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who resisted. The humans of Epsilon Prime had only mining equipment and civilian transport ships. They had no military, no weapons designed for war. They gave them 1 day to surrender. The humans refused. What followed was 6 months of the most stubborn, vicious resistance Al had ever seen documented. The humans turned their mining charges into explosives. They used their excavation equipment as weapons. They dug tunnels under positions and collapsed them. They poisoned water supplies. They set fires that burned for weeks. They kept broadcasting demands for surrender. The humans kept refusing. In the end, they retreated, not because they couldn't win, but because the cost was too high. They had lost 40% of their raiders to capture a single mining colony. It wasn't worth it. The final report from the commander was included in the file. These humans fight with the desperation of cornered prey, but the cunning of apex predators. They do not acknowledge when they are beaten. Recommend avoiding human settlements unless absolutely necessary. File after file showed the same pattern. Humans surviving impossible situations. Humans refusing to surrender when any rational being would. Humans turning the tools of civilization into weapons of war. But it was the commentary from the predator species that truly frightened Al. These were not creatures easily scared. They had dominated their region of space for 2,000 years. They had crushed a dozen rebellions without mercy. The Pride had hunted prey across half the galaxy. Yet they were afraid of humans. One annotation from a commander read, "Captured a human scout ship, crew of 4. We kept them in separate cells, standard procedure. Within 3 days, they had established communication through the ventilation system using a code based on tapping sounds. Within 5 days, they had fashioned tools from the meal trays we provided. On day 7, they escaped, killed 3 guards and stole a shuttle. We tracked them for 2 weeks before losing their trail." Note, humans demonstrate pack bonding even with non-family members. Isolation does not work as expected. Another note from a hunting master was even more direct. "I have hunted for 70 seasons. I have taken prey from 200 worlds. I am considered the greatest hunter of my generation. Last month I hunted a human male in the Crystal Wastes. He had no weapons, no supplies, and no chance of escape. He survived 19 days in a desert that should have killed him in 3. When I finally cornered him, he did not beg or run. He picked up a rock and attacked me. I killed him, but he broke 2 of my claws and fractured my jaw before he died. I do not wish to hunt humans again." Al spent hours reading through the archives. The more he read, the more a terrible picture emerged. This network wasn't just documenting interesting hunts or unusual prey. It was a warning system. The galaxy's predator species had created this network to share information about dangerous prey. And humanity was now classified as the most dangerous prey in the galaxy. The final file Al opened was dated just 3 days ago. It showed a map of human expansion through the outer territories. Red markers indicated human colonies. Yellow markers showed contested zones. Blue markers showed regions claimed by predator species. The red markers were spreading rapidly, pushing into yellow and blue zones. And wherever humans established colonies, the predator species were pulling back. Someone had written a note on this file in the language. "They are expanding too quickly. They do not respect the traditional boundaries. They do not fear us as they should. We must decide. Do we accept this new power, or do we unite to eliminate them before they become unstoppable?" Below that, someone else had written in, "Vote scheduled for next lunar cycle. All apex species invited. Topic: the human problem." Al closed the files and sat in silence. His people had survived for thousands of years by staying neutral, by trading with everyone and threatening no one. But this was different. If the predator species united against humanity, the coming war would consume the entire galaxy. He thought about those videos, about Sarah surviving 47 days in a hunting preserve, about miners holding off trained raiders for 6 months, about humans who fought with rocks when they had nothing else. The predator species saw humans as dangerous prey, but Al realized they were asking the wrong question. Humans weren't prey at all. They were something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that refused to accept their place in the natural order. Made his decision. He opened a secure channel to the human embassy on Station Gamma 7. If war was coming, the humans deserved to know. And maybe, just maybe, the rest of the galaxy's prey species deserved to know that someone had finally stood up to the predators. The message was simple. I have information about a threat to humanity. We need to talk, immediately. He hit send and waited, knowing he had just made himself a target. But as he had learned from watching those videos, sometimes survival meant taking risks. Sometimes it meant standing up even when every instinct screamed to hide. The humans had taught him that. Part 2. Ambassador arrived at Al's apartment within 2 hours of receiving his message. She came alone except for 2 security officers who remained outside. The young had expected a delegation, maybe even an interrogation. Instead, he got a tired-looking woman in her 50s who sat down across from him and said simply, "Show me." Al played the videos, all of them. Sarah in the hunting preserve, the Epsilon Prime colony, the scout ship crew that escaped captivity, the warnings and threat assessments from dozens of predator species. Watched in silence, her expression never changed, but Al noticed her hands slowly clenching into fists as video after video played. When he finally showed her the map with the upcoming vote about the human problem, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "How long have you known about this?" she asked. "I discovered the network 12 hours ago," Al said. "I contacted you immediately." "And you're sure this is legitimate, not some elaborate hoax?" Al pulled up the encryption analysis. "The security protocols on this network are beyond anything I've ever seen. Only military-grade systems from apex predator species could create this. It's real, Ambassador." Stood and walked to the window, looking out at the station's central hub where dozens of species moved about their daily business. "We've known humans were disappearing in the outer territories. Ship crews, colonists, survey teams. We thought it was just the normal dangers of expansion. Pirates, accidents, hostile environments." She turned back to Al. "We didn't know there was a coordinated effort." "There wasn't," Al said. "Not until now. This network has existed for centuries as a way for predator species to share hunting information. But humanity has changed everything. For the first time, prey is fighting back effectively. The predators are scared, and scared predators are dangerous." Pulled out her communication device and sent several encrypted messages. Within minutes, she received replies. "My military is on his way. Colonel, he needs to see this." While they waited, asked Al about himself. Why he did what he did. Why he chose to warn humanity instead of selling the information to the highest bidder. "Because I'm prey," Al said simply. "My people have always been prey. We survive by being useful, by staying small and non-threatening. But watching those videos, seeing humans refuse to accept that role, I realized something. Maybe we don't have to accept it either." Colonel arrived 30 minutes later. He was a big man with gray hair and the kind of scars that came from real combat. He watched the videos twice, taking notes on a tablet. When the last video finished, he looked at with grim certainty. "The missing ships," he said. "This explains the pattern. They're not just attacking random targets, they're testing us, finding our limits." "What do you recommend?" asked. Was quiet for a long moment. "We have 2 options. We can try diplomacy, reach out to these predator species and try to find common ground. Or we can show them exactly why they should be afraid." "Explain the second option." Pulled up a map on his tablet. "The predator species think they understand human survival capabilities based on random encounters. Colonists defending their homes. Captured scouts escaping. Individual humans surviving against the odds. but they've never seen what humans can do when we have a plan. He zoomed in on several locations in the outer territories. We insert special forces teams into known hunting grounds and contested zones. Small groups, minimal equipment. We let the predators hunt them. But this time, we document everything. We turn their own terror network into our weapon. We show them what humans are really capable of. That's a significant escalation, said carefully. So is a coalition of predator species voting on whether to exterminate us, replied. We need to change the conversation from should we eliminate this threat to can we afford to make enemies of these people. Fear keeps predators alive, Ambassador. Let's give them something to fear. Thought about the videos, about Sarah fighting with sharpened sticks, about miners holding off raiders, about the desperate creativity of humans with their backs against the wall. If we do this, we need to be smart about it, strategic. This isn't about revenge, it's about survival. Agreed, said. We pick our targets carefully, we make every insertion count, and we make sure the entire galaxy sees what happens when you hunt humans. Over the next 3 weeks, Operation Defiant Echo was planned down to the smallest detail. 5 teams would be inserted into 5 different predator territories. Each team had a specific objective: survive, document, and demonstrate human capabilities in ways that would leave no doubt about humanity's status as a threat. Team Alpha went into a hunting preserve, the same one where Sarah had survived. 6 Marines, minimal weapons and cameras built into their equipment. They gave them the standard 3-day head start. The Marines used those 3 days to turn 10 square kilometers of jungle into a nightmare. The hunting party that entered the preserve was confident. They had watched the Sarah video and dismissed her survival as luck. They were hunting trained soldiers now. It would be over quickly. It was over quickly, just not the way they expected. The Marines didn't just survive. They hunted back. Every trap they expected was different. Every path that should have been safe led to danger. The Marines used tactics from Earth's bloodiest conflicts, adapted for an alien jungle. They used psychological warfare, leaving messages in blood. They used the predator's own overconfidence against them. By day 5, the hunting party was down to 2 survivors who barricaded themselves in their camp and called for extraction. The Marines let them go, but not before making sure every second of the hunt was broadcast to the terror network. Team Bravo took on They prided themselves on their raiding efficiency and brutal tactics. Team Bravo showed them what efficiency really looked like. They turned a supply depot into a fortress, held it for 17 days against overwhelming numbers, and only after they had documented the complete tactical breakdown of 3 separate assault forces. Team Charlie went deep into space. There were pack hunters, like wolves but the size of bears. They thought pack tactics would overwhelm any human group. Team Charlie proved them wrong. 5 humans moved like ghosts through territory, turning the predator's own pack mentality against them. By the time the leadership realized what was happening, Team Charlie had disrupted 6 hunting packs and escaped without losing a single member. But it was Team Delta's mission that became legend. Dr. James was not a soldier. He volunteered for Operation Defiant Echo because he wanted to understand predator species better. The plan was to have him captured by hunters and placed in their ritual combat arena, where prey species were forced to fight for the entertainment of nobles. Studied his first 3 opponents carefully. He let them win, but not easily. He made them work for it. He learned their attack patterns, their biological weak points, their instinctive reactions. By the 4th fight, he had figured out how bodies worked. He won the next 20 fights in a row. Not through superior strength or speed, but through understanding. He knew where to strike to temporarily paralyze their limbs. He knew which joints couldn't handle certain angles of pressure. He knew how their breathing system worked and how to disrupt it without causing permanent damage. The nobles were horrified. This wasn't how the arena worked. Prey was supposed to die. That was the natural order. stood in the center of the arena, breathing hard but undefeated, and delivered a speech that would be repeated across the galaxy for years to come. You brought me here to prove I'm prey. You wanted to show the galaxy that humans know our place, but you made a mistake. You gave me time to learn. Humans are very good at learning, and once we learn something, we don't forget. The arena footage went viral across the Terror network. Predator species everywhere watched it, some in anger, some in disbelief, all of them in fear. The final mission of Operation Defiant Echo wasn't planned by the military. It was a civilian freighter called the Persistence, carrying 23 crew members through contested space. When pirates boarded the ship, they expected standard procedure: intimidation, theft, maybe some violence to make a point. The crew of the Persistence had watched the Terror network broadcasts. They had seen what humans could do when cornered. They had seen Sarah survive 47 days. They had seen Team Alpha turn the hunters into the hunted. They decided they weren't going to be victims. The pirates' helmet cameras broadcast everything back to their fleet. The footage showed the boarding party moving through the Persistence's corridors, expecting frightened civilians. Instead, they found a prepared enemy. Engineers had rigged the ship systems to create confusion. Lights flickered on and off. Bulkheads sealed and opened at random. The environmental controls cycled between freezing cold and burning hot. And through it all, the crew hunted the pirates. Not professional soldiers, cooks, mechanics, a 16-year-old kid from the hydroponics bay. They used tools, improvised weapons, and the intimate knowledge of their own ship to turn the boarding action into a massacre. The pirates' desperate calls for help were broadcast live to their fleet. The last transmission came from the pirate captain, barricaded in what he thought was a secure room. "They're not civilians. They can't be civilians. Civilians don't fight like this. Send reinforcements. Send everyone. Send." The transmission cut off. When the pirate fleet's recovery team finally boarded the Persistence 3 hours later, they found all 23 crew members alive and unharmed. They found 17 dead pirates, and they found a message written in pirate blood on the cargo bay wall: "You picked the wrong ship." The footage spread across the Terror network like wildfire. Every predator species saw it. Every apex hunter watched what happened when you cornered humans who had nothing to lose. The galactic conversation had changed. It was no longer about whether humans were dangerous prey. It was about whether predators could afford to keep hunting them. Al watched it all from his apartment on Station Gamma 7. He had started this with a simple warning. Now he watched as humanity rewrote the rules of galactic power. The Predator Coalition's vote was scheduled for the next lunar cycle, but Al suspected the question they'd be voting on had changed. It wasn't about eliminating the human threat anymore. It was about how to survive in a galaxy where humans existed. Part 3. The Predator Coalition met on a neutral station deep in unclaimed space. Representatives from every apex species gathered. Though with their massive frames and hide, the in their black armor, the Pride with their pack leaders, and a dozen other species that had spent at the top of the galactic food chain. They came to vote on the human problem. They came to decide humanity's fate. They arrived as the most feared species in the galaxy. Then the New Haven colony burned. News of the attack reached the coalition meeting within hours. An extremist faction, refusing to accept humanity's new status, had launched a surprise assault on New Haven, a small colony on the edge of human space. 5,000 humans lived there, mostly families and agricultural workers. The used orbital bombardment, quick, brutal, total, no survivors, no warning, just complete annihilation. They left a message in the ruins, written in a language old enough that only scholars could read it. "This is the price of defiance. This is the cost of forgetting your place. Let this serve as a reminder to all prey species. We are apex. We are eternal. We are inevitable." The message was meant to terrify humanity into submission. It had the opposite effect. Ambassador appeared before the Galactic Council 18 hours after the attack. She didn't ask for help. She didn't beg for justice. She simply made a statement that would define the next century of galactic politics. The species responsible for New Haven have declared war on humanity. We accept. Any species that supports them, aids them, or protects them will be considered hostile. Any species that remains neutral will be respected. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification. Then she left. The Predator Coalition's vote never happened. Within days, Earth's military command authorized unrestricted response. Human fleets mobilized across a dozen sectors, and the galaxy learned a terrible truth. Humans who were fighting for survival were dangerous, but humans fighting for revenge were unstoppable. Colonel led the military response personally. The strategy was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Human forces didn't just attack military targets. They attacked the entire concept of the hunt. The first target was a breeding world where young hunters were trained in the traditional ways. Human forces surrounded the planet and broadcast a message. You have 24 hours to evacuate all civilians. After that, anyone remaining will be considered hostile. The leadership refused. Their breeding worlds were sacred. They would defend them to the last. The humans waited exactly 24 hours. Then they landed. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a systematic dismantling of everything they believed about strength and dominance. Human forces used tactics the Predators considered dishonorable: ambushes, false retreats, psychological warfare. They targeted communication hubs, supply lines, and command structures. They didn't fight like honorable warriors. They fought like survivors who had learned from every species that had ever tried to kill them. Within 3 days, the planet surrendered, but the humans didn't leave. They established what they called a reconciliation zone. The who remained were required to live alongside species they had previously hunted, with humans enforcing peace. It was, in many ways, worse than death for a proud hunter species. They weren't killed. They were domesticated. The same pattern repeated across space. One by one, their worlds fell. Not through overwhelming military force, though humans had that. Through something more subtle and more terrifying: forced coexistence. Al watched the war unfold from his position as liaison between human forces and the growing coalition of prey species. He saw something the Predators didn't understand until it was too late. Humans weren't trying to exterminate them. They were trying to change them. "Why don't you just kill them?" Al asked Colonel during one of their strategy meetings. "You have the power. They attacked your colony." Looked tired. He'd aged years in just months of war. Because killing them doesn't solve anything. Next generation of grows up, learns about the war, wants revenge. Cycle continues forever. He pulled up a map showing the reconciliation zones. This way, their children grow up with our children. They learn we're not prey, we're people. Different approach, but maybe it sticks. It was working, but slowly. The first generation of young raised in reconciliation zones showed remarkable changes. They still had the hunting instinct, but they directed it towards sports and competition rather than predation. They still craved dominance, but they learned to achieve it through cooperation and achievement rather than violence. The older hated it. Their leadership called it cultural genocide. They broadcast desperate messages across the terror network, begging other predator species to intervene. Some tried. They launched a major offensive, attempting to break the human blockade around space. They brought their best ships, their most experienced raiders, their deadliest weapons. The humans were waiting. The Battle of the Outer Reach lasted 6 days. Human forces used every trick they'd learned over thousands of years of warfare. They used decoys and false sensor readings. They used gravity wells to trap ships. They used computer viruses to disrupt enemy communications. And when they tried to retreat, the humans let them go, but not before attaching tracking beacons to every ship. 2 weeks later, human forces appeared in home territory, having followed the tracking beacons through every secret route and hidden base. The message was clear: if you attack us, we will find you. Nowhere is safe. They sued for peace within a month. But it was the pride that truly shocked the galaxy. There were pack hunters, proud of their unity and strength. When human forces approached their space, they prepared for a glorious last stand. Instead, humans sent a single ship with a single passenger, a human behavioral specialist named Dr. Sarah, who had spent 20 years studying pack behavior in Earth's wolf populations. She met with the Pride leaders and explained something they had never considered. Humans were pack animals too, not through biology, but through choice. Humans pack bonded with friends, with comrades, with allies who weren't even the same species. You see us as prey because we don't have fangs or claws, Doctor said. But look at what we've accomplished. We've bonded with species across the galaxy. We've taught prey species to fight back. We've created packs that span solar systems. You're not losing to a prey species. You're losing to a rival pack that's bigger and more adaptable than yours. The Pride leaders spent 3 days debating. Then they did something unprecedented in galactic history. They offered humanity a pack bond. Not surrender, not alliance, a bond, recognition that humans had earned their place as equals. Colonel accepted on behalf of humanity. The war in space ended without another shot fired. The Terror Network, still broadcasting across the galaxy, began showing different content. Instead of warnings about dangerous prey, it showed something that frightened the remaining predator species even more: cooperation. Footage of human children playing with young in reconciliation zones. Medical teams treating wounded with the same care as human soldiers. The Pride and human Marines training together, learning from each other's tactics. Ambassador appeared on the network herself, making a statement to every species watching. We didn't want this war. We wanted to explore, to build, to grow, but you forced us to fight. Now you see what we're capable of. Now you understand what humans do when we're cornered. But here's what you need to understand. We don't want to be your predators. We want to be your partners. The choice is yours. The remaining predator species faced an impossible decision. They could continue fighting a war they were losing against an enemy that refused to be destroyed, or they could accept the new reality. The age of apex predators was ending. The High Council was the last to surrender. Their leader, an ancient hunter named who had ruled for 3 generations, appeared on the Terror Network in full ceremonial armor. His speech was brief and bitter. We broadcast warnings about humanity's ability to survive our hunts. We documented their resistance, their stubbornness, their refusal to accept death. We thought we were warning each other about dangerous prey. We were fools. We should have asked a different question. What happens after they survive? The answer is before us now. They ensure no one else has to endure what they endured. They turn enemies into allies. They change the rules of the galaxy itself. The age of the hunt is over. We surrender not to prey, but to a force we never anticipated, mercy backed by overwhelming power. The war ended officially 6 months after it began, but the real changes were just starting. Was appointed director of what was now called the Galactic Memorial Archive, formerly the Terror Network. The new archive maintained the old broadcasts but with a different purpose. Every species in the galaxy, predator and prey alike, could access the footage. They could see the hunts, the survival stories, the battles, and most importantly, the reconciliation. Why keep these records? A young asked Al during a school visit to the archive. The child had been born in a reconciliation zone and had never known the old ways. So we never forget, Al replied. So your generation and every generation after remembers what happens when the strong prey on the weak. So we remember that the galaxy doesn't have to work that way. The old predator species adapted slowly. Some never accepted the changes and retreated to remote regions of space, clinging to the old ways. But most, especially the younger generations, found new purposes, became explorers and athletes, became engineers and builders. The Pride became rangers and peacekeepers, working alongside human forces to protect new colonies from genuine threats like hostile environments and natural disasters. The prey species flourished. With the predator threat diminished, dozens of civilizations that had spent hiding began expanding. They built new worlds, developed new technologies, and most importantly, they stopped being afraid. Humanity spread across the galaxy, but not as conquerors. They became teachers, showing other species the survival techniques that had kept them alive. They became mediators, helping former predators and prey learn to coexist. They became builders, constructing the infrastructure for a new galactic civilization. Ambassador, now retired, visited the Memorial Archive on its 10th anniversary. She walked through the exhibits with Al, looking at the footage that had started everything. The videos of Sarah surviving 47 days, the Persistence crew defending their ship, Dr. Serena fights, all the moments that had convinced the galaxy humans were too dangerous to hunt. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked Al, "using their own network against them, fighting the way we did?" Thought about the question carefully. You did what you had to do to survive, but more than that, you showed the galaxy what survival really means. Not just living through danger, but making sure others don't face that danger. Not just defeating enemies, but turning them into friends. That's what terrified the predators most, I think. Not your violence, but your compassion. On the archive's main display, a new exhibit had opened. It showed quotes from humans throughout history, words about survival and hope, and the stubborn human refusal to give up. The last quote, attributed to an ancient Earth philosopher, was displayed in every galactic language. "We are the ones who survived, and we remember." Al had added his own interpretation below it. "And because they remember, they ensure others won't have to merely survive. They ensure others can truly live." The galaxy had learned what humanity tried to tell them from the beginning. Survival wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest or the most feared. It was about being too stubborn to quit when things got hard, too smart to fight the same way twice, too compassionate to become the monsters you fought against, and too persistent to ever give up on building something better than what existed before. The age of predators had ended. The age of people, of all species working together, had begun. And it had started with a young information broker who found a secret network and made the choice to warn those who were being hunted. Sometimes survival meant taking risks. Sometimes it meant standing up when every instinct said to hide. The humans had taught him that. Now the entire galaxy was learning the same lesson.